I want to talk about the UC Berkeley situation, and I want to present something that I feel like most of these people already know, but we need to talk about this because this is some information that's not being put out there. And that is that this is now a riot. This is something that turned from a protest into a riot. And I have a million reasons, I have a million theories, and I could, speculate anything, so I don't want to do that. But I want to talk about is why do these things happen, and why is it that fucking free speech here is being denied? Now, you guys know I don't care. I hate people. I fucking hate people who are always like, oh, people are SJWs or trying to silence speech or we hate, we hate. I hate that. I don't like it's part of life that just needs to go away where people sit there and say, I can't listen to anything that somebody else says because it disagrees with me, so I'm going to bubble myself. I'm going to create this social bubble where I'm no longer, valid to criticism or argument because all I'm hearing is an echo chamber of myself. But anyway, what happens when this stuff happens? Like, what? This was a protest. This was something saying, hey, we don't want this guy coming to UC Berkeley, to make a speech because he's been linked to having, done hate speech, I guess you could say. Even though there's really no reports of him being, a hate speech proponent. But anyway, the biggest problem is that I don't know who organizes these movements. And that's what we need to stifle. Is not stifle protests. Protests are fine. Protests are a good thing. But this quickly became a riot. And you know why? Because it gives people an excuse. And that's something that needs to start becoming a real thing, is that people need to stop having a fucking excuse. There is so much going on. There's so many people with weapons. There are people with, trying to vandalize. There's people with starting humongous fires. There is the destruction of the Starbucks. There's so much destruction, and it snowballs now. Because it's not really anything about the protests anymore. It's about the excuses that people get. When you see these things, what happens? It starts off like a normal protest. Hey, we're grouping together. We're going to organize it when we want to do something. The Women's March was something that was similar to that. We start something small and it just snowballs into something huge. But unlike the Women's March, this becomes more dangerous because you have people who are essentially radicalized. Not in the way that the Women's March is, where it's talking about women's rights and trying to present options. This was just saying that we don't want somebody here. We are blocking their ability to speak. And that's a difference into why the audience, I guess you could say, the real rioters of the situation are the problem. Is because when you have something that's an origin of a movement, and there's like a genuine purpose to it, which is, hey, we don't want Milo here because, he's very anti-social justice warrior, or he's against our purposes or our values or our morals. That's not too bad of an argument. But still, regardless of that, in that statement, that is a blocking of freedom of speech. Somebody was invited to a campus to speak, to present their opinions and values to people who have maybe like-minded or maybe want to become educated to that. And people are saying, no, we don't want that. We want to block that. We don't want that on our campus because we have a different ideology. Now, what happens from there? There's a drastic difference in the people in that audience of that protest, is that you have a couple of people who started this out of genuine, a genuine interest, and then you have people who tag along because they feel like their extremist ideas are what is going to help them, I guess you could say, win this protest, win this argument. And to an extent it did, because Milo had to cancel the event because it became a riot. And so going more into the snowballing effect, it starts from a genuine purpose, a genuine interest. However, it's a very flawed interest. It's somebody trying to block freedom of speech. However, it's still kind of genuine there. And then it goes into people who are more radicalized, people who have more tendencies to be like, instead of arguing with somebody, they just shout at them until the other person shuts up. And then you have people who are violent. And then you have people who are never violent in their life, but now that they're in the mob with these people who are violent and upset, it just becomes the snowball where, okay, well, all these other people seem to be against this, and, I'll join in. It's really the worst part about the human brain, is that we tend to want to follow what other people are doing. It's really kind of a scary thought, because you had genuine interest, you had a genuine purpose. Now you've got some people who had some genuine interest, but they were more violent and they were more upsetting, and they were more Instead of having a conversation, an argument, or a debate, they just say, no, block it off. And then you have people who are violent, and then you have people who are rioters, and then you have people who are, vandalizing, and I guess you could say, for so many words, terrorists. And then the next thing you know, all those people who originally started there for a good purpose have attracted all of the wrong people. And then you have people who were really good people, and now they're joining in on this because they see that everybody else is doing it, so that means we can do it too. So now, what happens after that? Not just do we get more people in this essentially mob of rioters, you get people who were just coming into this because A, they knew the police would be diverted. They knew that the police wouldn't be interacting or trying to stop, so they can now go in and vandalize shit and not get any punishments. That's part of the society and it's part of the culture, is that if you know you can do things without repercussions, chances are sometimes you will act on that. And, a lot of people look at it like, wow, UC Berkeley, the campus, every fucking police officer, riot officer, everybody's down there. Shit, let me just go rob this fucking Starbucks. Let me go destroy this property. Let me go vandalize everything, and I can get away with it scot-free. So this is really the de-evolution of an organized protest, an actual conversation that's trying to be started here. Because nobody cares about the original point of the argument anymore. It's all about, wow, these leftists and these extremists, and they're just trying to block freedom of speech. And it was like, well, they were trying to block freedom of speech, but they tried to do so in a way that was actually, conversational. And that's the scariest part about all of this. Like, it's no longer people who want to have a conversation. It's people who say, no, I am in an echo chamber. I only want to hear what I want to hear. I'm only going to say what I want people to hear me say. And if they have a different opinion, I will block them from speech. That's like a great example of that asshole Steve Shives. Rather than have a conversation, block yourself off, stick yourself in an echo chamber, and spew these ideas that are just absolutely mental. I mean, there's tons of videos out there. I will have a link in the description to all these riots and these things that are going on. But nobody seems to be talking about the origin of this issue, which is absolutely mental. We're talking about the riots. We're talking about people. The news is still calling this a protest. It's a riot now. It's absolutely insane. And I gotta really give a shout out, by the way, to ShoeOnHead. She's the one who really kind of informed me about the situation. Then I started looking in for more details. But the biggest problem is nobody's looking beyond the riot. And that's kind of a scary thing too, is that nobody's sitting there and saying, okay, well, what started this? How did this catalyze? How do we actually make it so that we achieve, to an extent, what the organized protest was there to do? And I know that might sound like, a cuck move, where it's like you have to concede the fight, but it's almost essential to this point, because it's no longer about the essential argument. And then once the essential argument is tackled, all these other people who weren't even into the argument, who weren't even into the protest, who just came there to be part of this riot, to be part of this giant protest, to be a vandalizer, to be a fucking abuser, assaulters and stuff like that, they can no longer act because the original protest has no purpose anymore, and then they're able to get arrested and taken away. People who, they instigate fights, they create fires, they do damage, they've been hurting people and, I guess you could say injuring people, for lack of better words, and there's nothing stopping them. That's what's terrifying, is that there's a police line of people who just have to stand there and they can't interfere, because if they interfere, then you've got a full-blown, just mob fight riot, and it's terrifying. You have to, as much as it sucks, and as much as I know everyone on the alt-left, alt-right, everybody on either side of the spectrum is going to hate it, you have to address the major issue that was presented at the origin of this argument. Nobody's doing that. Nobody's talking about that. We're all talking about, oh, haha, these are what lefts look like. They just block freedom of speech and then they turn violent. And then the right side, or the left goes to the right and says, yeah, you fucking people, you spread hate speech and now you're the vandalizers. And all you're doing is reporting on the bad people. You're not looking at the good. And it's nobody wins anymore. And that's not the thing. Nobody has to fucking win. We need to have a conversation. People need to go home. People need to stop. And that sounds so fucking childish to say. People need to stop. Just stop. But how do you look at the situation and say to yourselves, yeah, this is justified. This is valid. It's not anymore. It's not. And I hate saying that, because I talked about this during the election in some prior videos. I was like, I'm so ecstatic that people are now more politically involved than I've ever seen in my entire life. Like 5 years ago, I was sitting there listening to what people were talking about, the Obama administration, the drone attacks and all this stuff. I couldn't get a single fucking person to give a damn. Now everyone's talking about it. Everybody's active. Everybody's being part of something. But there's too many people who are part of it now that know how to abuse it. These protests have moved from conversation into violence. How many times does this have to keep happening? How many times do colleges need to feel this fucking sense of entitlement to say that, well, we get to decide what happens? And I mean, yeah, you kind of do to an extent. You know, that's kind of part of being a college or a community is that you get to voice, you know, your freedom of speech. But there are people there who have genuine interest. There are people there who were excited to see Milo. There are people who wanted to have a moment where they could say, yes, I wanted to hear this. I wanted to open myself up to this conversation. I wanted to understand what somebody else might think. You know, that's open discussion. That's how speech works. Somebody presents an idea and you decide whether on what they say is what you want to believe or you want to like not necessarily concede, but you want to understand or believe, or maybe you want to oppose, or maybe you want to just have a conversation or debate back and forth. And it's become the situation where now, instead of having a protest, it just will become a riot. I don't think there's been a peaceful protest other than, like, the Women's March in so long. Because, like, everyone just has an excuse now to go out and protest. And that's great, you know, and I'm gonna sound really condescending here, but I feel like a lot of these people just want to be like, oh yeah, when I was in my 20s, I protested. I was all out there trying to get Trump unelected, you know, I was out there trying to get him impeached. I feel like these people, and like again, I apologize if this does sound really condescending because I would love to be a part of this just to see what it's like out there, but unfortunately I live in a place where nobody cares about this shit. But I feel like people just want their excuse to be like, you know, I was part of the civil rights movement. You know, they want their photo in the history book. They want to be a part of something. And then there are those people who just say, rather than take a conversation piece and try to, you know, push a narrative, to push a conversation, to push a debate, let's just block everything from access. And I'm mortified about this. This is terrible. It's like people just go out for any fucking reason, you know. I go to school, I have a job, we all have things that we have to do, and I honestly wonder myself, do these people have jobs? Do they actually go to school? Do they actually, like, you know, work at their studies? Do they actually try to better themselves as human beings? Or do they just say, I want to stay in this echo chamber? You guys will, I think anyone who's listening this far will understand something, and that is that as a human being, it is your job on this world to learn. It is your job to become a better human being, to understand more, to open yourself up to information. If all you ever do is sit down in your chair and say, I'm done learning, I'm done, I don't need to learn anything else, I know everything I need to know, or I don't understand the other side of the conversation, I don't want to understand the other side of the conversation because what I think is right, what I know is right, like what everything that I say is right because that's what I've grown to know, or that's what that's what I would like to believe. It doesn't work like that anymore. Everything is gray. There's no white and black anymore. Every single thing in the world is gray. And I think with Trump being elected, it's even more gray than it's ever been because there's no longer just like conversations about white and black. It's no longer just like, hey, freedom of speech, hey, Muslim ban, hey, you know, transgender rights, hey, you know, I guess you could say financial policies, border control, whatever you want to call it. There's no longer this conversation. It's just putting a little bit of a little catalyst out there, and people just run with, oh, they're a Nazi, oh, they're a fucking cuck, or they're alt-right. There's no more discussing things and saying, how do we reach a compromise? That's what politics is trying to reach a compromise. And as much as people would, you know, feign to say that this is political, it is political. Everything that's going on right now is political. And I do fear for UC Berkeley because, like, it's a school with a reputation. It's been a big fucking deal. And, I mean, they're not probably going to lose any, you know, students from this incident. But I fear for the people who actually wanted to go there to better themselves. And this is all that they have to deal with. All of these schools that, like, are very well known, you know, these Ivy League schools or maybe these very popular known schools, all they're ever subject to is protests and crybabies and fucking, I hate the left side for it, but these people who feel entitled. I mean, I've never had a moment in my life where I said, yeah, I deserve to have the safe space. I deserve to have my echo chamber. I don't want to hear this hate speech. You can't make me listen to this hate speech. You can't make me change my ideals. And I'm like, I go to school to better myself. You don't need to better yourself. You can get the fuck out. You don't have to go to college. You don't have to be there. All these people feel that they're entitled and they have to, this has to be their way, and I hate it. It's so despicable. It's so to the point where I shudder to think in 10 more years, like, what's going to happen, because this isn't going to calm down. This is only ever going to ramp up more and more and more. And scary part is that none of this is going to be in the history books. Nobody's going to talk about this in, 3 months. This isn't going to be a part of, the American history where people were rioting and they, successfully impeached Trump because of, the absolute law breaking that he did. It's not going to happen. The only way that that's going to happen is through our government. The only way that we're going to get somebody like Milo to stop having so much power is to have a conversation and say, pull his followers away. And I don't even really like Milo. I do like that he's got a decent head on his shoulders, but he's just gaining power. He's just getting momentum. This level of insanity is just feeding into the narrative that people want. And as much as I hate to say it, I think Milo's narrative is a lot better here. It's that, look at all of these people who, rather than have a conversation, would rather block us off. And then on the left side, they feed into this whole, oh, these people are racist, these people are white supremacists, these people are, nationalists, or whatever the word is nowadays, because there's always a new fucking word. Rather than actually being like, well, maybe they're not. How do we defeat them at their own battle? They say, no, block them off. I mean, when has that ever worked? If you attempt to silence somebody, all you do is give them a platform to say, this person's afraid of what I have to say. Do you want to listen? I really do fear for that. You guys don't understand that. Anybody who's part of this protest, please understand, mob mentalities from psychological standpoints is very, very, very hard to defeat. But I implore you, if you're ever in a situation where you started off in a peaceful protest and it's just becoming worse from there, leave. Get out. Push your own narrative in another way. Do something else than be part of what could be considered the problem. The last thing I will say is that I really do appreciate anybody listening this long. I do think that UC Berkeley is going to have a hell of a time to try to recover from this, but I think it'll be amazing to see what happens from this, because it's just going to conversate more people. It's going to, create more arguments, It's going to be about schools and safe spaces and hate speech and Milo and the safety and riots. It's going to be more conversation. And I can't wait to see what that's going to turn into. However, it devolved faster than it should have. This was last night it started as a protest, and in hours it turned into a riot. That's usually not how it goes. This is faster than normal, and for the sake of most people involved, I fear that there's somebody pulling at the strings and encouraging this to happen more. Now that might be a little bit tinfoil hatty, but just look around you. How fast did it take for somebody to start lighting things on fire and then start vandalizing things? It didn't seem really that fast. That slow. It seemed to happen within a couple hours. So find out who's organizing these things. Talk to them. Let them be the voice of reason, because whoever starts this is the voice of at least a moderate level of reason. Whoever instigates this, that's the fucking person, in my opinion, that should be thrown away into jail, because they're the ones that turned this into a riot. I love all you guys. I'll see you in the next video, and if you do have any opinions, anything like that, I would love to hear them in the comment section. If you made it this far, please, please, please write something nice about ShoeOnHead and go show some support about this, because it's there's plenty of people who are talking about this. Not many people are making videos, but I only made this video because I felt like we needed to talk more about this stuff, where it's not necessarily the purpose of it. It's about how these protests and these peaceful conversations are just devolving into riots. So I love all you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.